everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Callie Smith, and I am the ECAC Communications Coordinator. So just a few housekeeping items today. As you got on, I think it announced that this meeting is being recorded. We will share that recording with all of you at the conclusion of the program, as well as post this on our website and on our social media platforms. So you will have access to the recording after. As we go through, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we will address all the questions at the end. I know that our moderators and panelists have a lot to go through today, so I will kick it off to ECAC Chair Stuart Discount.
Thanks, Callie. Welcome to our member partners and hopefully those who are guests today that will actually become member partners of ECAC, which stands for Enterprise Communications Advocacy Coalition. For those who are not member partners yet, we started this association coalition a little over 3 years ago with the idea of really being the association or coalition that actually advocated for the contact center industry in Washington. Most of us were past ATA PACE executives or board members, and we felt there was a need. Unfortunately, with the dissolution of PACE, now there's a void in the industry, and ECAC over the last year or so has really taken that up. We've still have a focus on advocacy. We've met with the FTC, the FCC. We've been to Congress already, but we wanted to expand what we're actually offering. I want to first of all thank the panelists, Fred, Michelle, and Jim for participating. And by the way, they're all member partners of ECAC. These webinars that we're going to have once a month on various topics will be open for us panelists to our partner members at no charge. In 2005, we actually are going to something that I was very involved with for many years, and I know Michelle was as well, was our Compliance Officers Forum, which was really a very once a month, a recap of our legislative, bills that have been submitted both federally and state. And we're going to, starting in March, we're going to actually start that again. We are going to have a self-assessment compliant tool for member partners, meaning that you'll be able to go in and self-assess whether or not there are any compliance holes in your organization. We're not going to certify that. If there's holes, you can hire a law firm, you can hire one of our member partner vendors who handle compliance, but we're going to offer this at a very, very reasonable rate, just so you guys can sleep at night knowing that there are no holes in your organization. As I said, we have monthly webinars. Next month's webinar is really talking about, from insiders in Washington, of what's going to happen now with the new Congress. What's going to happen with the Supreme Court's decision where they've reduced the authority of the federal regulators. So we're going to have a conversation about that. And then in March, we'll have a conversation about privacy, which is obviously going to be a very hot topic in Washington this year. Once a week, we're publishing a congressional calendar. If you're a member, you're already receiving that. And this will tell you what's going on in Washington, potential hearings and things like that. And from a networking standpoint, any of our member partners are going to be able to access each other through our member directory. While we're not big on having in-house events to compete with the CCWs of the world, we do, however, would like our members to do business with members. That should be at least an introduction to all of you. I think, Kelly, next slide. Okay, so here are the 4 issues, and today we're tackling artificial intelligence, which is obviously in the news every minute of every day of how this is either going to help or ruin our society. So we're going to have a conversation on that today. But we're focused on telecommunications, TCPA, TSR, other telecommunications issues, privacy. As I said in March already, we're going to talk on that, but we've already made our comments known to Congress about a year ago about how to enforce a federal privacy law. And actually, in the Republican bill, they took one of our suggestions and it's in there, which was very nice. Consent, January's the month of consent, and who knows what will happen now with the new Congress and the new administration. And then, of course, the last one's artificial intelligence. So if you're not a member, We're $4,000 a year. We're not asking for more money. The only thing we ask you for is your participation. So when we send out an email asking for your opinions on how's this regulation or how's that regulation going to affect your business, we need you to tell us, because we're not the operators. We're just managing the association. And we will be a 501c6 in the very near future, and really a full-fledged trade association. The coming events, Callie, you going to do that at the end? Okay, here's just here's some coming events. We have the legislative crystal ball, February 20th. March 6th is our first compliance officers forum. We have a privacy scheduled for March 20th webinar, and we are going to have one live event, and that will be a Washington legislative conference, where you'll just attend, and we'll have some great speakers, and that'll be late 2025 or early 2026. We're in the planning stages of that. So I hope you'll hear from us, trust me, after the meeting, and for all those non-member partners, we hope you'll join us. The more our voice, the more people, the more jobs we control, the larger our voice gets in Washington. And I think with all this going, I think there's an opportunity with the new Congress, a new Supreme Court decision. I think our voice will be listened to more than it had been in the past, to say that. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Fred Stacy, longtime friend and expert, and he's going to be the moderator of our panel today. And here you go, Fred.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Stuart. Welcome, everybody. Happy to be a member of ECAC. Highly recommend taking a look. But yeah, I'll give a quick intro. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a 30+ year contact center guy. Started as an agent, grew into leadership, ran centers, got pulled into technology, then built out and ran different departments inside technology companies. And today I'm the CEO of Cloud Tech Gurus. So we are what's referred to as a TSD or a TSB. Think of us as a company that sits in between all the buyers and sellers and consultants inside contact centers, for services and technology. So I get the advantage of seeing all the AI tools early and often, and understanding, how are people buying it? How are implementations going? So we get a unique perspective. We're kind of the middleman. So with that, I want to introduce you to Jim Ayub, longtime friend, industry expert. Jim, why don't you give a quick intro to yourself?
Sure, thanks so much. My name's Jim Ayub. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at ECAC Global Services. Like Fred, I started as an agent. I had green screens, which half the people on this podcast don't even know what the green screen is. But I've been at ECAC for 24 years, and what we do is we're an AI-enabled BPO that delivers remarkable experiences for our customers, which, excitingly enough, keeps us compliant and out of those fines. Which, with that being said, I'm going to pass it on to my friend Michelle, talk a little bit about herself, and we're going to get going soon.
Great, thanks, Jim. Thanks, Fred. And Stuart, it's good to be on a webinar with you again. It's been a while. So I'm Michelle Schuster. I'm managing partner at McMurray & Schuster. I'm former consumer protection chief from the Ohio Attorney General's office, and was there when the do not call laws were going into effect. So while I did not set out to become a telemarketing attorney, when I left the AG's office, the very first event I went to was a PACE event. And the very first person I met was Ron Allen, and I had just had knee surgery, and he was very kind. And so I thought, you know what, this is an association I want to join. So from there, the rest has kind of become history. Our law firm is primarily focused on consumer protection laws and regulations and compliance, telemarketing being chief among that, but privacy is certainly becoming an area that is quickly starting to surpass even the telemarketing and consumer protection marketing and advertising. We also have a very active litigation group for those that don't come to us for compliance, and that has been particularly active lately. I will tell you, the plaintiffs' attorneys are not waiting until January 27th. They believe these laws are already applicable. So it's an interesting world out there. And being on webinars like this hopefully will help prevent some of those potentials for you. And AI has definitely got some pitfalls for the uninformed. So today we will make sure that you are no longer uninformed.
Well, let's jump in. I think it's only it's important to first define artificial intelligence for the audience. I think everybody in the industry sees AI everywhere. Everybody's talking about it. But let's actually define it a little bit better. So Jim, I mean, there's nobody better. You're building on this stuff today. You're using it in your operation. Let's start with you. Let's define, how do you define artificial intelligence when you're talking to an audience?
So it's funny. I love this question because you're right. Everybody's talking about AI. Crap, they even got the .ai web things now. Being in the industry so long, it's so hard to define. So I'm just going to talk a little bit different. I'm going to talk about two myths in the industry. Okay, what people think are. So number one, people think AI in the contact center or even the CX space. They're thinking about bots. It's going to remove your jobs, which, I'm very boisterous about. It's not removing your jobs because y'all said that when you put out the IVR. Going to remove all your jobs. Chat came out. Going to remove all these people. It's the biggest myth, one of the biggest myths in the industry. So that's myth number one. Myth number two is this whole AI for general, like general purpose. I could type something into ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Poe, all of them out there, and it spits out this beautiful response. And now people think, I got general modeling down. I can do anything. I got a 360 application now that I can plug into. So let's talk a little bit and dig into this little myth. From our experience, and we process 500 million, actually it's about it's 1 billion conversations in the last couple of years through our stuff that we created and representing some of these Fortune 500 companies you guys know through this whole AI CX journey. And here's what I've learned. AI transformation goes much deeper than just this generalized myth that everybody thinks they can buy ChatGPT or get the bigger one. So it's all about this ecosystem. So when you're creating this ecosystem that enhances every aspect of that customer interaction, and I talked it from the beginning. I'm using AI in agent hiring, using AI in training, I'm using it in real-time assistance, and last but not least, quality monitoring and compliance. That's really what I think of when I say what AI is. It's really an ecosystem which nobody's looking at it in this perspective. And while it does help my daughter, who by the way is going to law school now, Michelle, I'm going to hook her up with you. She's going to law school. I said, I don't think you can use ChatGPT in law school, so we're clear. I said, but I could be wrong. I'll connect you with friends of mine in the industry. That's just a little bit to get us going, Fred. What do you think?
Well, I want to kick it over to Michelle first, because I'd love to hear your perspective, Michelle, as a lawyer. I mean, when you talk AI, what do you think of? How do do you think generative? Where do you take that conversation?
Well, when we think about AI, it's a little bit different because I'm not so much thinking about what the technology does, but the regulations that are placed on AI. And so when I'm thinking about AI, I'm thinking about things like biometric laws that require disclosures if we're going to be using any type of biometric information. I'm thinking about the use of an artificial voice as it relates to the type of consent you have to get to place calls using an artificial voice. Also, things like state laws that are requiring disclosure if you are using AI. And in some of those, it's related to specific industries. We also have these unfair, deceptive acts and practices laws that are out there. And so is AI producing something that is unfair or deceptive under laws that have been around for decades and decades? So, for me, it's a little bit different. I will tell you, though, in just the everyday business use, and your daughter will be using AI in law school, because if she doesn't learn how to use AI in law school, then she will be irrelevant when she gets out of law school. Every law school or every legal research tool out there right now is offering AI, and law firms have to be able to use that. Otherwise, they will not be able to provide the efficiencies that their clients are expecting. So For me, it's a little bit of a different approach, and it might just be that my ex-husband was into IT, so the IT part of it just makes my head hurt.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, this is a big conversation. Artificial intelligence to me, that's kind of the class, that's the overarching, term that talks about a lot of different things underneath. In our world in contact centers, like Jim said, you've got you've got artificial intelligence that can analyze and understand and help judge based on who you should hire, what their skill sets are, their language quality, depending on, whether they're speaking English or Swahili. There's tools out there that can analyze that. Through the training process, to the onboarding, to the actual nesting and, agents actually being on the phones, and, the agent assist is one, and then the conversational analytics on the back end to make sure you're compliant and, to help agents perform better. Those are all tools that are under that larger class called AI. But there is no, businesses have to take a different look at this. When I talk to clients and partners, artificial intelligence is much like digital transformation. It is not something that's only contact center related. Absolutely, digital transformation impacted the customer's experience, right? Absolutely, artificial intelligence will too. It has for a long time. My first forte into machine learning and AI was, almost 14 years ago. Tried to build a supervised learning based chatbot and bring it to market with a partner, and learned at that point in time that the future was artificial intelligence, but LLMs, November of 22, and ChatGPT changed the world. Now everybody's racing to try to keep up with a technology that even somebody like me that does nothing but works with cutting edge technology and sees, even I can't keep up. I learn of a new supplier, of a new product that actually has a decent customer base, a decent footprint, good infrastructure. I learn about new companies all the time and new use cases. And the scarier part that I think makes people nervous is the quality. It is moving to the point where your delays when you're having a conversation with a bot are now almost human-like. Sub 1 second delays between stating or asking a question and getting a response. So this stuff is moving really, really fast. And that's where people like Michelle, operators like Jim, it's important to hear, what they're seeing. So let's, hopefully that helps kind of give AI is not just a point solution. It's not just bots. There's a lot of things to think about. So let's talk about, Jim, what is keeping you up at night?
You know me, I'm a stats guy. So here's an interesting fact.
Okay.
Since ChatGPT started, I think it was November 2022 or whatever.
Well, that's when they launched. They started years ago, but yeah.
Okay. Since then, 70,000 AI companies launched since ChatGPT came. Now, here's a really good fact. 90% of them fail within a year. So to your point, that's why we can't keep up, because everybody's coming out with this whole new thing that says, hey, I got a new shiny tool. What really truly makes any AI application powerful is when it's built for a specific challenge. That's what the industry's missing, because everybody's coming out with and I'm old, I'll date myself here, because again, half the people won't know this one, but I use this analogy. Ron Pappel, the rotisserie, set it and forget it. That's what people are trying to sell in the marketplace, and it's not true. And you're talking about large language models. We're already advancing in that, because you know what we're looking at, which I know we're going to talk about later, Michelle, narrow language models, which is secure, which is protecting your compliance, protecting your data, which I know we'll talk about better. But I wanted to throw that stat out there because I'm like, this is crazy. There's that many startups.
Oh yeah. And the valuations without even money, pre cash flow is insane. Okay, so Jim, let's jump into this though. As an operator, as a guy who runs, you guys are a large BPO. You've got a big footprint. What keeps you up at night when it comes to artificial intelligence?
Well, as an operator, my biggest concern has always been about the handling of sensitive customer data. while
Right.
being able to use that data, right? Like,
Yep.
how do I leverage AI, but how do I handle all that sensitive data? You know, we're processing, like I said, 1 billion conversations annually. The potential of every one of those interactions having personal information, financial data, health information. Crap, I don't want my health information out there because I'm a mess, right? One leak can be catastrophic, right? That's why we talk about when we as a company saw this coming out, we built this narrow language model that runs completely isolated. You know, it's all about redacting the data, deleting it to make sure you're the GDPR and the California, all those ones. But everybody's rushing to these open API plugins. I can plug into this. I can do these quick integrations. I can get it done quicker or just pop into these open APIs and these. It took time to build the narrow language model, and it takes even more time to make sure it's secure. And you got to build it from the ground up. I'm not a big believer in plugging it in. And by the way, I want to plug in everything because I want all the data, but you also got to be able to build it from the ground up. And that's why I always tell everybody the coaching I give you today, this is what you should be having on your desk. I don't have it on my desk because I have a bunch of crap, as Michelle, we already talked about. I'm a collector, right? But like the one thing I would tell you, nothing leaves the environment ever. That's how you stay secure. That's how you stay compliant. That's what keeps me up at night.
All right. So, I mean, I got to go to you, Michelle. From your perspective on the legal side, what is keeping you up at night right now?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that truly nothing keeps me up at night. I'm the world's greatest sleeper. But if I was kept up at night, this is what it would be. And so, sometimes we'll engage with companies that really don't have a handle on their AI. So what's being fed into their AI? Is there a possibility that we're going to get some kind of discriminatory outcome from that, especially as it would relate to employees, if they're using it for employees or for recruiting of employees, those types of things. Sometimes it's very difficult to get visibility into that. Also, clients thinking that AI is different than what it really is, which is the collection of consumer data. If you are collecting consumer data, then it is going to implicate state privacy laws that have passed and continue to pass, and each state has its own little nuance. So how are you looking at your AI to make sure that it is giving the consumers the right to review the information you're collecting, potentially delete it, modify it, the types of rights that consumers have under privacy laws. And then, just even with the results that are returned to AI, if it stays internally within your company and not as big of a risk as if something is being put out to the public. And that could be even in conversational AIs, it could be in chat, those types of things. But if we're putting out information that is applicable to the consumer protection laws that prohibit unfair or deceptive acts or practices, are we putting anything out there that would be deemed to be unfair or deceptive because we can't substantiate the statement that has been made? And so, it's really those types of things that can have that can be difficult to have visibility into within an organization. And from my perspective, even more problematic that they aren't things that they would think to talk to their lawyers about so that the lawyers can provide them with the necessary advice and guardrails to avoid potential litigation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a lot. What keeps me up at night, really when it comes down to it is two things. The bad actors. We already see it. People are using voice modification tools and, they can sound exactly like you, call family members, ask for money, right? That's the simplistic format of it. But that can scale, right? And then, of course, there's all the security side. Now hopefully people a lot smarter than me are developing just the same so that the good AI is better than the bad AI, but bad actors move fast and they're already starting to take advantage of it. Outside of that, for my clients, I worry about the naive developers. And this kind of goes back to what Jim was talking about. A lot of people went out and said, look at this, ChatGPT, LLMs, let's just put it in our system and let's let it go. And then we get stuff like, there was a famous case, I think it was almost 2 years ago now, shortly after ChatGPT launched, somebody had put an LLM on eatingdisorder.org, phone line. And through a period of time, how the LLM, there were no guardrails, there was nothing built, there was no data, it wasn't a PLLM, it was an open LLM. And I talk in acronyms. So private LLM, large language model versus a, open and public one. So they put it on this open one, and over a short period of time, it decided to start telling people that were calling the phone line that they should just stop eating. So, I mean, of all things to tell somebody that's got an eating disorder, I mean, things like that. I know there are a lot of developers out there, just like Twilio got a start and became what it is today from a bunch of developers using SMS messaging, and plugging in APIs and doing their own thing. They're doing the same behavior on large language models and generative and conversational AI, but they're not putting the guardrails around it. And I worry about my clients and, and how that's going to impact them if they've got developers out there doing it. It's too easy. It's too easy to get it's like $20 a month and, up to $200 a month, and you get the APIs and you can start developing and put stuff out there. Next thing you know, one of your toll-free numbers is all of a sudden being managed by a conversational bot that you have no control over. And you may not even be aware it's out there. So, I mean, those are the things that keeps me up. Beyond the Terminator and, AGI and, where that's going. But I mean, Michelle, I'd love to kick it back over to you, though. I mean, what are you seeing coming down the pipe from legislation? I mean, there's a lot of things I hear, but I'm not in your world. So I'd love to hear what you're seeing coming out within the next, let's call it in 2025.
Yeah. So, we kind of look to the past to see what's likely to happen in the future. And, what we know has happened over the last couple of years is that as a starting place for the federal government and a lot of the states, they commission studies into how AI is being used, what the potential consumer protection harms are, what the potential privacy harms are, discriminatory, those types of things. And so those studies are concluding. And as a result of those studies, we will see legislation being developed. And so kind of the flavors that those bills and legislation are taking now is being required to disclose that you're using AI, call like monitoring or recording, eavesdropping, or biometrics. I'll just put that all together in one category. So that you have to either disclose that it's being used, get consent to use it, or follow those privacy laws that I previously talked about. Also, we're seeing the regulation of artificial voice as it relates to telephone calls. And the folks on this call are going to be very familiar with what's going on with the TCPA right now and the one-to-one rule that takes effect here in a little bit less than 2 weeks now. And I think we'll continue to see those types of things. It's going to be all about protecting what data goes in and what result comes out. Colorado just introduced a new bill that takes effect in February with high-risk systems and requiring they be registered and that disclosures be provided and guardrails be put up on those types of things. And so I fully anticipate we'll see all those types of flavors moving forward. And I suspect more than one of those flavors in states as they move forward.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump on it. I think you're right. You know what I think the issue is? Like what you're saying is, first of all, the education. Mm-hmm. Secondly, like when you talk about the future, it goes down to one statement. You're slapping in these APIs, general light stuff, without understanding the implications of what it can do. I mean, it sounds so simplistic, but Fred, both of you are right. Like Fred, think about it. These people who are building these things, they're building it because it's a new shiny toy, but they don't actually look down the future of what possible implications can happen, right? People are spending millions of dollars on these flashy AI things and saying I have AI, and they're not thinking about the potential exposure you have to not only regulatory, FTC, and all these other organizations, but when you think about it, and it's so comical because it is a shiny new toy, and nobody's thinking about. And I use this analogy. Most people are playing checkers. which is one move after the other. And I'm playing chess. I'm thinking like 2-3 moves ahead. And I think that's the fundamental part that a lot of these developers are missing the boat on.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You know, the legislation piece, I mean, I knew coming out that even early last year that on this, we're going to have to disclose, you know, when we're using artificial intelligence to talk to customers. I already knew that. I didn't know how it was going to show up. I'm not, again, not my world. That's yours, Michelle. You know, but I knew that was kind of a no-brainer, right? You know, what I didn't really think about was the biometric side. I mean, obviously that there's a big impact, and a lot of people have been using biometrics. That's not new. I mean, that is, let's be for the audience, biometrics is not new. We've been using voice biometrics, fingerprints, you know, face identification for a long time. You know, but I didn't think about it in the terms of artificial intelligence and how you leverage that. I'd love to understand. I know you mentioned in preparation, Illinois has a new biometrics law. Could you share what that is? And I mean, do you see that kind of moving forward nationally?
So Illinois' law is actually not new. It's been around for a little bit, but what's new about it is the application of it to AI. And I think we're going to see that with a lot of different laws that are out there. I'd mentioned the Unfair Deceptive Acts and Practices, UDAP type of laws in the consumer protection world. And so you have to get consent to collect biometric information from Illinois residents. And if you don't, then there is a potentially pretty hefty fine. You know, California is another example of this as well. California's got the SIPA, which requires if you are going to be monitoring or intercepting phone calls, that recording phone calls, that you have to provide a disclosure for that and get consent. And if not, it's $5,000 per call. And so to the extent that you're using this technology while you're making telephone calls, it has some pretty significant implications. You know, really, really have to be careful when you're deploying this on phone calls, that you're aware of those monitoring and recording laws in the states, and if you're required to get consent before you can use those types of things. You know, what's new is the ones that are talking about disclosure of the use of AI, which I see as something different than monitoring or recording telephone calls. If you are using generative AI, being required to disclose that, Utah is one of those states that has had a AI law that went into effect requiring the disclosure of the use of generative AI. And, you know, it's a little bit limited in Utah. So take a look at it before you start going crazy about it, because it is limited to professions that are required to register in Utah with certain agencies. And real estate agents is probably one of the larger because anybody is required to register with the Department of Commerce, which real estate agents are required to. And so if you're using generative AI in your practice, you're going to need to disclose that.
And I mean, Jim, I mean, I can only tell you from my perspective, but I'd love to hear, are suppliers talking about this? You know, point solution suppliers, or, you know, I know you build a lot of your own stuff, but you also have a lot of conversations, and you do have some suppliers in your org.
Mhm.
Are they talking about this? Are they warning clients, or are you hearing any
No.
conversations? Okay.
I'm sorry, Coach. It's funny you say that, because what they're all saying is we're compliant. Well,
Okay.
define compliant. Well, we have SOC 2. We have high trust. We have that's not letting me sleep like Michelle can sleep. I'm still up. So, and here's the like, just, and I don't speak like everybody else. You guys know I'm pretty much an open book. Let's just be perfectly clear. It goes back to trust, right? If you lose trust or have a breach or data gets leaked, I don't care how freaking fancy your freaking AI is, AI ain't getting it back. They're not building that trust back. And I think that's what people lose, because they don't look at it from, and again, I talk about this all the time about IT guys. I love IT guys. They're sitting in their offices with all the lights off and 15 screens. They're not thinking about the next, they're not thinking about the implications, number one, and they're not thinking about what could happen when I build this great toy, right? And I think that's what it is. And to answer your question, people aren't talking about, like, even GDPR. Everybody talks like, I'm GDPR compliant. What does that mean? Well, I'm redacting the data. Well, is it encrypted in transit and at rest? And then how do I know that it's been deleted? Because my flow chart over here tells you it is. Yeah, I know my security guy. He's like, show me. Like, they want to actually see it, and nobody's talking about it because they're just using the words, we're compliant, I got high trust, I got this ISO. I mean, that's the problem. In order to protect data, it can never leave. That's the thing I hear about. And a lot of people say, no, it's an AWS, it's secure. Are you kidding me? No one's trying to go into the private company and break it. They're trying to break into AWS, Azure. They're the ones they're going after. Just because it's up there doesn't make me happy.
Yeah, the cloud is just someone else's computer. Remember that. Michelle, he brought up GDPR. I know we talked about it, but I mean, data is important. I know you've seen this before. This is not new, right? I mean, the GDPR has been around forever. The California Data Protections Act is what, 2-3 years old now? Maybe even more. I mean, is this is obviously a big deal, being able to control, delete, remove clients upon request. What Jim mentions, the ability to do that, how do they validate? But are you seeing actual, I mean, are there cases out there? I'm not hearing any big public cases about GDPR violations or California Data Protection Act. I mean, are you seeing some of that stuff happening now?
So stay tuned for the March California Privacy Protection Agency's meeting, because I think that they are going to be releasing a lot of actions during that. And I'm not so certain which one of those are going to deal with AI, but you got to look at those privacy laws, and they talk about the collection of consumer data. And so if you're collecting consumer data through your artificial intelligence application and storing that, do you have the ability to access that? Is it still personally identifiable? Can you modify it? Can you delete it? Can you do those types of things? And those are conversations you need to be having with your privacy counsel to see, especially if you're in California, because I tell you, they are feeling very emboldened by the how broad the California Privacy Protection Act is and their ability to enforce that. They are true believers in that agency, is what I would call them. And so, yeah, you raise a really good point. In GDPR, we're talking about data that are required to have certain types of protections and access to it as well. And so if you're dealing with European information, then EU information, then you're required to follow those as well. So these, again, none of these are new laws. It's just a new application of those laws. And so you have to build in AI to those other risk factors that you have evaluated and put policies and procedures in place to ensure that you're complying with them and then auditing against them. So it's the same thing we've always done. It's just adding another layer of it.
So we got some questions in here. I don't know if you guys saw that. Are you guys seeing your Q&A? I'll respond them to you. So we have a person asking a question that any one of us could hit, probably Michelle. Do you feel government will become more involved in policy auditing of the private public LLM with private companies? And where is the client's data stored and for what length of time? That's actually a great question.
I mean, those are all great questions, right? And those are questions you need to be asking your vendors. And so do I think that, so the question is, do I think that the regulators will be looking into those?
Yeah, will the government be more involved in private or public LLMs, for private companies? Think they're going to be more involved?
I absolutely think they're going to be more involved, and they're going to be involved in a couple of different ways. There was the executive order that required all executive agencies on the federal level to look into the potential use of AI, potential concerns, any concerns about discrimination and using that. And so all of that information now, although collected by the Biden administration, is still going to be there for the Trump administration to look at. And so I fully anticipate that they will start using that information to set rules for their own agencies. And then also for their agencies to look to see if there are any additional regulations that need to be passed to complement the arsenal of enforcement tools that they already have. And I fully expect that Congress will look at this as well. The Do Not Disturb Act had some implications for AI before it was at the end of the year, because it's not a carryover Congress, then that bill would have to be reintroduced. So it's not really relevant right now, but it certainly could be. So it's one of those times when, I mean, anybody who is not keeping up with legislative monitoring and doesn't have some kind of information outlet to keep up with all of the different things that are happening, it is coming fast and furious. And the worst possible thing is the unknown unknowns. As you'll see in my book from Donald Rumsfeld on the back of my desk, those are the things that should probably keep most people up at night, the unknown unknowns, and trying to the largest extent possible to have visibility into it and eliminate those.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is two things. So got to be informed, which is why it's important to join organizations that keep you informed, because let's be honest, we're not doing this on a full-time basis. We have full-time jobs, so it's always good there. The second thing goes back to losing control of your data. When you talk about data risks,
yeah, for
you're
sure.
losing control of your data. By the way, I consider myself a semi-smart guy, but I'm not as smart as the people I surround myself with. And I deployed one of these for one of my customers. And even after through all of the stuff, you know what he said to me? Yeah, I'd prefer if I can control the data. Is there any way you can put this on my own servers, blah, blah? I'm like, absolutely, we can. And I love that, because he's like, it's in my brick and mortar. It's not in the cloud. It's in my call contact center. I want it all right here, because he goes, I never want to lose control of my data, because I never want to have to come to you and say what happened. I'm like, that's genius when you think about it. He basically says you have to have absolute. His quote to me was, I want to have absolute control over my data, nobody else involved. And I'm like, not everybody would do that, obviously, but it's I applauded him for this, because I'm like, that's ingenious, and I'm happy to give you all the stuff you need to make it in your site, because it's a lot less risk off me.
Yeah, and then make sure that's in your contract too. So let's say you are not having it kept locally on your facility, that you are saving this in a cloud on somebody else's server. Make sure you fully understand what that actually means. And not that it's just explained to you, but that it's outlined in the contract that you have with that company that is providing your AI service, that this is how the information is segregated. These are the protections that are put around this. This is the access that you would have to it. And it's very, very important that you get that in your contractual obligations from them.
Absolutely. Here's another question. Wow, the keep you up at night examples are scary. What strategies, perhaps maybe two, should we ensure that are in place to keep the bad actors to a minimum, especially in the bots going rogue and the 800 numbers being taken over? Well, crap, I wish somebody could figure that one out, because I'm tired of getting these freaking things on my cell phone all the time, by the way. So anybody want to take a shot at that one? I don't know how I can't control my 22-year-old, my 23-year-old daughter. I don't know how I can get somebody else to be controlled, but anyone want to take a shot at that one?
Yeah, I would just start by saying you need to have an employee that's responsible for this. The problem is that it's been brought in, and it's just been brought in as something that the company is using and has the benefit of, without having somebody that's actually responsible for it. And it may not be your current IT person that should be responsible for that. It may be somebody who's more on the compliance side of things that needs to be responsible for that, and is doing the same types of audits that they would be doing for those SOC audits and those data audits and those types of things. So making sure that you have somebody that it is their responsibility.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess we never, and it's so funny you say that, because we have a whole compliance team, as you know, Michelle, working with us. We never give them any credit, because you never hear from them unless there's a problem.
That's the best possible thing that could happen. But believe me, the compliance officer is staying up at night right now.
Yep.
I can guarantee it. Yeah.
All right, so what you're saying is I should send him a gift.
For sure.
You should definitely take care of them, Jim. I'd say I think Michelle, you're spot on. What I'm seeing is chief AI officers, and the kind of the start of the focus of that, because I mean, in the end, it's basic business rules and leadership, right? If multiple people own something, no one owns it, right? So define somebody to own artificial intelligence. Make sure that you have documentation, you've got processes in place. Nobody builds AI without going through the proper chain, period. This cannot be a Twilio event where all of a sudden some, junior developer says, look what I added to our CRM. We're now texting automatically. You can't let it happen, so companies have to own this stuff, just like you have to own your data. And to go back, I mean, like I said before, this is much like digital transformation. This is a whole organization shift. So it has to be an interdepartmental person. It has to be somebody that can bring in compliance. Make sure you've got a compliance person that's, aware, working with and dealing with artificial intelligence and the impact. Make sure you've got somebody up from the operations side. HR is going to be involved because, as Jim said, you're doing actual assessments on the front end for the contact center people, but artificial intelligence is going to impact every single department. So you have to have somebody centrally on this moving forward. I would start there. And then once you've got that structure in place, then you can start to refine, right? But if you don't have somebody owning this, you're just asking for trouble. So from a leadership, from a business, from an ROI, get somebody in ownership immediately, for artificial intelligence. So
Absolutely. Next question. Are vendors advancing solutions that are based on capabilities that are disconnected from the realistic limitations of their technology? Oh, crap, I'll start on that one all day. Absolutely. They're selling you what their technology can do, not what you need to do. I tell everybody, number one, don't go to talk to an AI company if you don't know what your goal is. What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to get done? And then find somebody that can help you, pair you with that one, because that's the biggest thing in the world. I had a call today. Hopefully he's not on this webinar. Had a cold call today. Guy calls me up and says, listen, I built this. I'm a startup, of course. I just started this company, and I built a way to reduce your attrition using artificial intelligence. I said, okay, how? He's like, well, I built all these algorithms, so we take all your data, and he's going through this whole little 30,000-foot overview. And I said, let me ask you a question. First of all, you didn't even ask me what my attrition rate was, so you're not even asking me what my problem is. By the way, my attrition is not really a big issue. He's like, well, I've heard it's in the call center. I heard people at 10% a month. I'm like, well, you're not obviously talking to any call centers, because 10%, most people would be thrilled to death. But anyway, so to answer your question, yeah, they sell you what their technology can do without actually understanding what your problems are. And I think that's a big miss in the industry.
Yeah. And Pete, go ahead, Michelle. Did you have? Okay.
No.
Pete, it's a great question. Yes, surprisingly, some technology companies oversell and overpromise and underdeliver. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially in this case. And I appreciate it, and I know where Pete's coming from. The limitations really start though at an organization's data infrastructure, processes, data governance. This is why AI readiness in an organization and building the structure and getting everything in place is so important. All the stuff we've been talking about, it really comes down to, most companies are not even ready. Sure, there are the Amazons of the world, where 98% deflection is their standard. But they're born in the cloud, they're born in development, they're different, right? So as a lot of the development companies are already further down the path than any one of us are. But if you're on this, you're probably in the contact center industry, and I'd say that 90% of our industry is not even close to being ready. That doesn't mean that they can't deploy point solutions to help them work there. It doesn't mean that they still need to be doing all the work. So yeah, and if you don't know, find people that can help you. I mean, there's a lot of audience. There's a lot of people in the industry that are really good at this stuff, and this is what they do, is help clients really sift through all the BS and find the right tool sets and help them get ready. You from the legal perspective, you got Michelle, you've got teams like Jim has. But anyways, I know we've got some more questions. Jim, I'm liking that you're reading this. Go ahead and take the next one.
Yeah, encryption. So I think this is a question, but I can't tell. And it looks like one of my team members sent out all of their same name. They're linked to everybody. So I got like 40 people the same name. So I won't call them out. But encryption at rest will play a big role in this scenario. I'm thinking that's a question. Will encryption play a big role in these scenarios? Encrypting the data.
Michelle?
Yeah, so I mean, just from a legal perspective, I mean, having encrypted data ensures an additional level of protection for that data. And so, the data breach laws are still in effect, and you have certain responsibilities if you are representing that you are keeping information secure, and that can be employees, that can be customers. If you are in industries that have specific type of regulated data, health would be one of those. With HIPAA protections, if you're in the financial sector, financial regulations. And so, being required to keep this information secure does not change because you're using AI. AI is just any other computer system. And so however you're treating your data that is required to be protected in your current systems, that needs to extend to AI. And so, Jim and Fred have both brought up excellent points about really just understanding where your data is stored. If you are not the one storing it, understanding what their protections are. Encryption is obviously a very good idea, but just one of many, right? So it's important.
Awesome. Next question was, how do you choose the right partner in a sales-driven frenzy? Great question. I think, Fred, you kind of answered it. I mean, besides Fred, myself, Michelle, all of us are pretty smart. I would tell you to do industry events. I'll probably upset half the people that are listening today, but don't go just to the booth. Go to learn. Go to the sessions and learn what other people are doing. Come back, talk about it amongst your team members, and then find someone who's agnostic who would give you the facts, right? It's tough when you go, because I've seen a lot of people at these shows. Hey, my boss sent me here because I need AI. Well, you really need to define a little bit more. That would be my if anyone else had anything, but that would be my 2 cents of leadership for the day.
I like it. I want to jump to this last one because we're like 5 minutes left. And I think this is it's a good thing to talk about, right? At a time when we have uncertain or economic uncertainty, what are your thoughts on the importance for businesses to first do an AI readiness analysis and then begin evaluating providers in an effort to significantly reduce costs? A salesperson clearly wrote this. I'm just saying. No, I'm kidding. To help insure companies. So, first of all, have you guys, where's your stance on this? What do you do first? AI readiness? What do you guys feel like the right next step is? Other than calling both of you, of course, and have a conversation about it. But, Michelle, where would you start? You're coming from outside from a legal perspective. How would you look at AI readiness? How would you help an organization, start that process and then move forward?
Yeah, so in my mind, at least from our perspective, when we're talking about readiness and we're talking about it from a compliance perspective, we're talking about you already know the areas you want to deploy this into. You understand the information that's going into it. And so are you ready with your policies and procedures? And it may just require a slight modification to identify this as an area where data is stored. But are you ready with having those policies and procedures in place, your employees trained on it, and then auditing against those types of things to ensure that you don't have any gaps in compliance with the use of your AI, just like you would any other program system within your organization. This is, again, the process has not changed. It's just what it is that we're looking at is changing.
Good. How about you, Jim?
So for me, I think I'm going to say a couple things. So it's dangerous to say an AI readiness assessment because the reason I say that is the problem is nobody knows what they're going to do. Like for me, I like the crawl, walk, run theory. I would tell people the first thing I would be doing is thinking about something small. Pick 1, 2, 3 at most things that you want to actually get better at. And that's really what I would look at it from a business perspective. Because if somebody, and by the way, they've all done it to me, you guys all know, ETIC's got 3,600 agents. First thing they say, how many agents do you have? I say it's irrelevant. Well, I need to see the total scope. No, if your thing works on 5, going to 3,600 should be easy, right? So I tell people, pick 1, 2 things small, prove the model first, because your risk economically then is much less. If they can't prove the value, the return on investment on 5, 10, 15, or a small piece of it, there's no way in hell they're going to be able to do it with thousands. So that's where I look at it, is that how you significantly reduce it. I remember when I first got into AI, the guy who was trying to sell me the AI, here's what he started his conversation with. How many QAs do you have at ETEC? And let's just say, for sake of argument, hundreds. I'm going to remove them all. Yeah, run and run fast, because that's a lot. Okay? And that's why I always say start small and then grow. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, this is a particular question that I talk a lot about, is AI readiness. So I'm assuming the person that put that in there knows that. I'm a big proponent, this is the same as digital transformation. It's a company-wide initiative. You got to start and understand. Now, from a contact center perspective, I'm with you, Jim. Sometimes you got to deploy things, and there are tool sets today that have viable return on investments, have the compliance already built in, have all the things that you need to be able to deploy it safely today. There's no question. And with that, start small, grow into it. That's always a good plan, whether you're converting CRM, CCAS, or any technology. So AI obviously fits in that category, but I think businesses have to start down the path of AI readiness. And again, I would first assign, it doesn't have to be a chief AI officer, right? You can have a head of artificial intelligence, assign somebody to own it. Start defining, making sure your processes are in place, check your compliances, talk to IT, get your data governance, get all of your infrastructure. You got to start though, because the best time to do this would have been 2 years ago. So the second best is right now. So I'll leave it with that. Stuart, back to you, man. I think this has been a great webinar.
Yeah, thank you guys. It really was very informative. I just appreciate you guys.